Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, back from the 12th day of Minnesota Vikings training camp. Was this more than halfway through? I mean, we're only about a month from the start of the NFL season, and we have joint practices a week from now. Preseason game is coming up, so we are really in the middle of this thing. And tonight we'll have plenty of room for your questions and comments. I'll have a recap of the practice. Takeaways from today, a very fascinating paragraph and a report by my friend Tyler Dunn on the Vikings quarterback situation and much, much more throughout this night. But as we've done for every single training camp practice, and I will continue to do so, even though the quarterback position has been solved, because honestly, I've enjoyed doing it and it helps me explain how the practice actually went a lot better. Why don't we begin with how Kyler Murray performed on this day? And the answer is really good. Just like yesterday, he has been on point since he was named the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. And we'll take a look at the grid. He was 2 for 3 on deep balls today. And there were a couple of them that were right on the cusp of being 20 yards. So I'm usually safe with that if I'm not 100% sure. So on the deep balls that definitely went over 20 yards, he was 2 for 3. And on the intermediate stuff, also pretty solid today, 2 for 4. And one of them definitely could have been caught by Jordan Addison. Looked like he just couldn't bring it in, but I think it was more of a drop from Addison, but a quality throw, and then completed every pass underneath 10 yards, which I think Murray has completed every pass under 10 yards since he took over as the starting quarterback officially of the Minnesota Vikings. So let's take a look at the highlights, and I don't really have a lot of lowlights, but I'll talk about one play. Murray was overall 14 for 17 with 4 positive throws and just 1 negative throw today. And he was outstanding to start the practice. He jumped right out with a great throw. First throw of the day was a post route from Justin Jefferson in between the two safeties, up over the top, bang, right into his hands. Those are the ones that you dream about as a quarterback and as Justin Jefferson for sure. And the biggest thing here is that we've been talking every day about the connection between Kyler Murray and Justin Jefferson. We saw it early in camp. There were a couple of tougher practices, but the last 2 days, as these guys have been really starting to the ramp up process, and he's getting every rep with Kyler Murray, it is bang, bang, bang from him to Justin Jefferson. Tons of completions underneath today. The other highlight throw I had from Murray was to Jefferson on the deep throw to the left side, where he went through his progressions, found Jefferson. There was another one to TJ Hawkinson that was the same way, where he starts on the right side, then turns back to the left side, delivers the pass. Now that might be the play rather than going through the progressions. It's just what it looks like of you start back looking in one direction and then turns back to the other, goes through it quickly, finds Justin Jefferson. It's just been very much on point over these last 2 days, and getting it into the intermediate areas, getting it downfield more often. And the underneath stuff is also no joke as well, because there was one play, just for example, today where they ran a slant route where it was just Jordan Addison takes a couple steps and then knifes into the middle of the field, steps back, hits him right on the money. So it's not all just checkdowns, these under 9-yard passes. And when you look at how often, not just Kyler Murray, but the NFL throws passes that are under 10 yards, it's somewhere between 35 and 50%, depending on the quarterback, a very, very high percentage. It might even be more than that for some quarterbacks, but a very high percentage of throws come underneath 10 yards because of the way defenses play in the NFL today to try to limit explosives, keep everything in front of them. Flores' defense is kind of famous for running too deep all the time, trying not to give up those deep shots over the top. So the fact that he's gone these last 2 days as they've been doing a simulated game prep, that's what Kevin O'Connell explained to us the other day, was that they were going to do pretending, all right, well, I mean, these guys are going to play, but pretending they're really game planning here and having a normal week, having it treated like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice, and then off they go with their travel and everything else. So if this is how he's going to practice during the week, the football is not going to hit the ground a whole heck of a lot. And Murray's comfort has looked excellent. His timing has looked excellent. It's just been a little bit night and day from what we saw with the night practice and a couple of practices before that for Murray. And someone asked if he was getting versus the 1s and 2s. The answer is yes. He's the starting quarterback now, which means he's taking reps with the 1s and the 2s against the 1s and the 2s. So he's doing it all out there now. And there are reps for McCarthy with the 2s. There are reps for Carson Wentz with the 2s and 3s. But it's the vast majority now going to Kyler Murray. It's shifted over to the typical way you would go about it for a starting quarterback. The only low light that I could come up with, because one of the incompletions was a drop, and I don't have my notes for what the other one was, but I didn't have it as I had one negative throw. But I mean, this is really it. The only low light is they took a deep shot, and it looked like Jordan Addison wasn't sure that the ball was going to come his way. So he dropped back, kind of launched it up into the atmosphere for Addison, who was running down the sideline. And I had a good look at Addison kind of coming my direction. He was, he's going, but he kind of looks back and then realizes, oh my gosh, the ball's coming to me. Like maybe he didn't really expect it. And that was the only low light that I could really come up with from Kyler Murray. He had another very, very strong practice for the Vikings. So 2 days in a row there. And this is what you wanted to see, I'm sure, if you're Kevin O'Connell. And this is also why I think most of us who were watching practice every day said it's really time to start getting Kyler the rest of the reps. If you feel like this is so close you need this week, then okay, I guess you do it. But he needs to get in a rhythm. And that's what we've really seen, where he hits that first pass to Justin Jefferson. Well, it's not like he has to go stand on the side for a while and watch JJ McCarthy. He gets right back in there, takes a couple more reps, and can get in a rhythm as a passer. So it's been impressive over these last couple days. And I don't think that my opinion has changed a lot about what he can be and anything else from these 2 practices, because I never felt like we should treat 3 practices in that early install type first half of training camp period as being be all end all versus what we already know about how good this quarterback can be. But if you were looking for him to look on point, look sharp, look the position, right? Look the QB1. He has certainly done that over the last 2 days, I would say. In terms of other notes, let's start with Brian Flores. He was asked about Domonique Orange and Caleb Banks, and a sentence that he said really stuck out to me. He said he's always going to be patient with rookies. And when it comes to, Banks and Orange, we did see quite a bit of them today, and I thought I didn't count reps for the rest of training camp for Banks because I was doing it for the quarterbacks, but I felt like this was the most that I saw Banks out there. Orange has been out there pretty routinely in the full team 11 on 11s, and a good sign for both those guys who are going to play on Saturday. And I think it is important for them to get out there and play and show where they're at to the coaching staff. But I also started to think that it might be time to adjust expectations a little bit as we are about halfway through camp. We're about a month away of just how much we're going to see of Caleb Banks and Domonique Orange right off the bat at the start of the season. I think that when Hargrave and Allen, when they get cut and they draft 2 defensive tackles, that our first expectation is, oh, well, obviously, these 2 rookies are just going to start. But to this point, they have not been starters. It's been Ty Ingram Dawkins and Levi Drake Rodriguez. And when I asked Brian Flores about those 2 guys, his answer was like, yeah, those guys understand who they are now. Whereas last year and the year before for Levi Drake, they were still developing and learning who they are and getting confident in the scheme and all those things. We saw it with Dallas Turner. He only played 300 snaps in his first season. maybe what is Ivan Pace really the only rookie? And I think that was out of pure necessity that has played under Brian Flores a significant amount since he took over as the defensive coordinator. I can't think of many other rookies who did, and they did move on from some young players that they had that maybe they shouldn't have, that could have been depth and so forth. We're seeing a lot of Chuck Demings out there, but are we going to see him? He's not going to take over for Byron Murphy or Isaiah Rodgers. So I think that Flores has a longer term view for these guys and doesn't want to put them far in over their head. And he sort of made reference to, guys get drafted and the world tells them, oh yeah, you're going to go in and you're going to be all pro right away. You're going to dominate the league and everything else. And he pointed out it very rarely works that way in the National Football League, especially when you're talking about someone like Caleb Banks, who's coming off a foot injury. My observation for him is that there are a lot of reps where he is just completely negated by the offensive lineman blocking. And then there's a few where if he gets off the snap at the right time, if he gets a move in, you can see that power, that initial punch from Caleb Banks is so strong and so quick that, yeah, the tools are there and you could see them out on the practice field. But it's going to take work to have him really ready to play a big amount of snaps, is how I was interpreting that, of like, hey, let's be reasonable about expectations right off the bat. Now, what does that mean? There were only 3 defensive tackles from the previous draft class, from last year's draft class in the entire NFL, that played over 500 snaps. There were a lot that played between 400 and 500 though. And I would still put the bar there for Caleb Banks, but maybe as kind of a progressive thing, if it goes the best way it could possibly go. So start off with, maybe it is only 15 or 20 plays to start off the season for Caleb Banks. And then it gets going from there, and you see more and more and more as it goes along. So, I do think that with Caleb Banks, that our expectations off the bat, like, let's not do the thing where we just call people a bust right away if he doesn't take 50 snaps in the first 3 weeks of the season. I think that that's what Brian Flores is kind of maybe warning against, an overreaction there. And I'm always for development for players too. Like, don't throw them in over their head if you don't believe they're going to be ready for it, because that's how you lose confidence. That's how guys get injured, whatever else it might be. So Levi Drake Rodriguez and Ty Ingram Dawkins, that puts them really in the center of the discussion of 2 young development players who were drafted recently, who are now going to be a big part of this defense, it appears. And there's a lot of pressure there, but I also think both guys have looked pretty good in practice so far. After practice, I had a chance to chat with Ty Felton for a while. And, Ty seemed in very good spirits about where this thing has gone in training camp. I think he should be. He's had a very good camp, had a nice catch today on a ball that was over the middle, an in-breaking route, and Kyler hits him accurately. One of the positive throws of today to Ty Felton. He's been involved every single day. He's been mixing in with the ones. He has gotten deep catches down the field, which I asked him about the deep receptions, because I said in college, you were used underneath to get the ball in your hands a lot because the quarterback play just was not like this. That's for sure when he was in college. And he said that the thing that Keenan McCardle has been emphasizing to him is how to use his speed. So there's pacing, there's leverage, there's understanding how you're being played by the defender and taking advantage of that, of when to push the gas pedal down. And I think we've seen that a lot from him. And then, catching the ball early in camp was a little problematic, but he has had sure hands since then. And I'm intrigued about where Ty Felton is going to go, because I think he has had a really good camp so far. And I'm going to write about that conversation over at purpleinsider.football very soon. No Will Fries today. Joe Huber actually had an awesome block today for a really big run where he completely turned his man. And then I think it may have been Damon Claiborne, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it was Jordan Mason, blasted through and ended up with a huge run. Claiborne had another one that was nice today. The running game is starting to hit every day, which, I saw, somebody ask on Twitter, I forgot who, but, sort of said, well, wait a minute, if the running game is hitting, are we worried about the run defense? It's like, well, this is the forever question of training camp, right? Maybe we'll get a better feeling of that when they play the Baltimore Ravens, or just even get some shades of it during the preseason. But I think that the buy-in for the run game has been real, is the way that I would put it. Does that mean I'm guaranteeing a top 10 running offense? No, I'm not. But I think at least the offensive line, how they have played, the running backs, the gaps they've created, the different things that we've seen in the run game, how much they have practiced it. It feels like how much Max Bredesen is out there, which I saw, him bury somebody today. I mean, I think Bredesen is having a very good camp from what I'm seeing in the run game, that he's fitting in very quickly. So I think that the buy-in is very much real. Anyway, so Jacoby Thomas, though, continuing to be out. Curious. I don't think that we'll see him in the first preseason game. What they will do, if that's a longer-term thing. I mean, he has been taking some warm-ups and stuff like that, but hasn't been in those 11-on-11s. So we've ended up seeing a lot of Jamal Adams, a ton of Jamal Adams, like way more at safety than I would have thought. And he's been rotating in Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus. And I'm going to say this, that, I think a guy to watch is Jacob Thomas from James Madison. I think he's really looked the part so far in training camp. He's an undrafted free agent. Who knows what that means, but the safety position is kind of ready-made for guys like that to step in that don't have the perfect specs and start on special teams and then become something. I have my eye on him for sure. JJ McCarthy talked after practice today, and the main takeaway from JJ McCarthy was that he said that he wants to continue to stay with the organization. He did not go to the makeshift podium and demand a trade today, which I did not expect JJ McCarthy to do. If we're grading press conferences, which we sometimes feel like we are, I would say it was fine. It was fine. Like he, didn't come across as salty or petty or anything else, and sort of said it was out of his control and, so forth. And that he loves the fan base, loves everyone within the organization, everything else, and wants to succeed here in Minnesota. And whether that happens or not, I have no idea. Like, that's the next phase of the discussion of what is to be done with JJ McCarthy. I've said before that that might be up to him. Like, I think that if he practices great and they really feel like he's buying into continuing his development and his attitude is awesome and his teammates love him and everything else, then heck, man, like, stay here, see if you get an opportunity. We'll see what happens in the off season, but maybe something does come up where you do get to play this season. So that's how I viewed it. But if the attitude is toxic, if they are done with him inside and they're tired of trying to coach him and they just don't feel like any progress has been made, then maybe a trade is to be called upon. So, I mean, I can be talked into. I would say that it's favorable not to trade him considering the circumstances, but I could be talked into it if they really feel like there's no progress to be made. And the third teamers, we're starting to see them a little bit more. We saw a pass breakup from Bengali Kamara, who's going to be in the game. I mean, that's a UDFA. Hasn't gotten a lot of opportunity. And a couple of guys made catches. Terrell Davis, 2 days in a row, who is deep on the roster, but is a guy who dominated FCS in 2024. He made a couple of receptions. And Dylan Bell, who I know you guys haven't heard his name, and you've asked, hey, what happened to Dylan Bell? All you guys were hyping him up. Well, the reason is that if you're on the third team, you're not going to get any reps during a quarterback competition. So the preseason will be absolutely huge for those guys, as well as Dante Fleming and Jay Sean Jones and a lot of the other younger wide receivers as well. And the last note that I had was something that pertaining to JJ McCarthy came from Tyler Dunn of Go Long, friend of the show, and we'll get him on when I can. I know he's on his training camp tour. But he wrote a huge article over at Go Long. Make sure that you go check that out about Kyler Murray. Actually, it's a two-part article about Kyler Murray. The first part is about how pathetic the Arizona Cardinals are, which continues on a daily basis to show itself as there's like new accusations against Steve Keim that are crazy, the former GM. But anyway, the second part of his first article about the Vikings situation did include about JJ McCarthy. And this paragraph here really stood out. He said, I'll just read what this is written by Tyler Dunn. 9, the gritty, the towel, it all would have been nothing but footnotes in a 2-point font if McCarthy had performed. He did not. When O'Connell made coaching points, sources say, McCarthy too often pushed back. Why don't we do it this way? An acceptable rebuttal for a veteran quarterback with a full library of game reps to his name, not so much for a novice who barely threw the ball in college. The head coach doing all of the teaching has pelts on the wall too. O'Connell can point to Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Sam Darnold. You don't really have that latitude, one teammate said. Just execute as good as you can. In 2024, sure, Darnold would have occasionally risked with a different route on the backside of a play. Even then, he was more diplomatic about it. There was an understanding that O'Connell had a bigger picture of why of what he was dialing up. And, a couple people sent me notes. Hey, is this true? And what I would say is that it was said to Tyler and not me, but Tyler's work speaks for itself when it comes to his past of writing about all sorts of different NFL teams for Bleacher Report. He's covered multiple teams in the past. And I think that there's a really shining example, if you're familiar with his work, of people questioning the truth of something that he wrote that turned out to be very true in Buffalo. But anyway, I've known Tyler for a really long time, and I know that he is not writing BS when it comes to this. But I also think that we got this hint a couple of times from Kevin O'Connell ourselves. And the gritty thing into the end zone was an example of J.J. McCarthy had a really rough season to that point, had proven nothing in the NFL, and then he's telling his coach, I'll do what I want. And it's just not exactly how you would draw it up if you're talking about how, like, out of the box design for a quarterback and how his approach to that situation would be, right? Like, you would not say, yeah, why don't you just do the opposite of what your coach said, since you have lost a bunch of games and not performed well and your team's out of the playoffs and stuff like that. That doesn't really add up, right? And then O'Connell was on with PA one time last year, and he mentioned even in the Washington game where McCarthy played well, that he had come to the sideline and said that he did something because he kind of thought of it himself based on a scouting report that he had rather than what the scheme was. And that was a pretty telltale sign as well. So I think that with J.J. McCarthy, maybe understanding the landscape of the environment was an issue, where you talk about, nicknaming yourself, doing the gritty in the end zone, the whole towel incident and everything else. There's nothing wrong with those things necessarily. I would also toss in the personal foul as well in the Green Bay game. But there was just a lack of get it factor that showed up throughout last year. And I think the same thing is here too, where in the NFL, if you are a young player, you are supposed to go out and play exactly the way you're coached to play, whether you're a quarterback or whether you're a punt returner. Like, this is what you do. You play the way the coaches, they're there for a reason. They get many millions of dollars in O'Connell's case for a reason. And pushing back and saying that, we're doing it the wrong way, you need to do it a different way, it just is not going to be very well accepted by the coaching staff, because that's not how it's done in the NFL unless you are a Matthew Stafford or you've been around for a long time. And normally there's a dialogue there anyway. But I think you could see where maybe people were kind of frustrated by that. Like, you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do within the offense, and then they end up having to dumb it down for him at the end of the year. I think when you put all these things together, being coachable is a major part of having success in the NFL. It's also a part of maturity. And we are talking about a very young quarterback here. Teams, when there's a lack of coachability, can get frustrated pretty quickly. So I didn't get that sense from McCarthy or anything that was said during this year. And people grow very quickly when they're as young as J.J. McCarthy. But I think this is one of those things of identifying, hey, what was it that kind of went wrong last year, and that's part of it. And if they feel like he's still not coachable, that's where it ties into the trade conversation. If they feel like he is going to push back against them and not just go out and execute, then the trust factor goes down. And maybe you could be talking about Carson Wentz as the backup. Maybe you could be talking about them, possibly looking for a different location for him if they don't feel like he can take the coaching points that they are giving him and then applying them without, any sort of type of discussion. And look, I think that some of it is it certainly is, not having been in the NFL before. And in the same article, Matt Hasselbeck says to Tyler Dunne, look, this was me when I was young as well. So I'm sure he's not the first quarterback of all time. I'm sure this was Caleb Williams when he was a rookie, to feel like you're entitled to kind of tell the head coach how it's going to go. But, you could see where that would, for a bunch of veteran players who have learned to do their jobs, been like, hey man, like you really don't have, as he said, like the latitude to do something like that. But that kind of makes it feel a little bit like, is that connection going to be good enough to have him develop still as a backup? Is he going to take all the coaching points as a backup that he needs to do and apply them? Like, it's going to say a lot in the coming weeks and into the season, if he makes it there as a Minnesota Viking, about his progress. But people can learn and grow. And I think that from those experiences last year, if he looks back and says, you know what, I just needed to be more coachable, then he's got a chance to learn and grow. And if he says the coach is a silly goose and I know better, then there's not a great chance that you're going to learn and grow. So that's kind of how I would look at that. But I'm curious about your reactions as well to what Tyler wrote. And there's a lot more in the story than just that, about the Cardinals organization, the chance of Kyler stepping in and being successful, things that we've talked about a bit on the show, but can't wait to get together with Tyler and discuss them at some point in the near future as well. So let me give you guys a FanDuel question of the day and a word from our sponsor, and then we'll get to your questions and comments and thoughts and what's on your mind for this evening. Is now the dust has settled on the quarterback competition, and I don't think we need to relive it every single night. Like, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings as they are, as opposed to going through every detail of what happened. The reality is Kyler Murray's the starting quarterback of the Vikings. JJ McCarthy is not, and we're going to go from there. So the FanDuel question of the day is this: the Vikings are going to play a preseason game, everybody. Real-ish sort of football. There will be players out there who will matter, according to O'Connell. He's going to have starters playing. They are 2.5 point favorites on FanDuel over the New York Giants in this week's preseason game. Simple question. What are you looking for? What do you want to know most about the Vikings in their preseason game this week? So let me know in the comment section. And I want to tell you about my friends over at Brooklyn Betting, who are now my friends because I've been having a back issue for quite some time, and it was a real hard time to sleep. But once I got my mattress from Brooklyn Betting, so much better with the sleep quality. And I think that's because their mattresses, while they are cost effective, they are also built with intentionality. It's solid. It feels built to last, and it's built right here in the USA, and the craftsmanship really shows. And the name of the bed that I got is the Aurora Luxe. Sounded really snazzy, but also fit exactly what we were looking for. And that's the great part about Brooklyn Betting, is that it's not one size fits all. Here, just take this mattress and good luck. They offer mattresses for everybody, every sleep style, and even hard to find sizes. So we got what we wanted. But if it had not worked out and I needed something else, then we could have used their 120 night comfort trial, which is, if you're not comfortable, you can swap it or return it for another mattress hassle-free. So go to brooklynbetting.com and use the promo code PURPLE at checkout to get 30% off. That's brooklynbetting.com, 30% off as a part of their back-to-school sale with the promo code PURPLE. All right, let's get to your questions and comments and what you have to say about the things happening today with the Vikings and what you want to see in the preseason. So 86 Chrysler says JJ McCarthy is the reincarnation of Josh Rosen, 10th overall pick in the draft. One bad season as the starter, replaced by Kyler Murray. That is ironic, yes, that has happened, although Rosen was just a rookie. Did get a second round pick in return. I would be very surprised if that happened, but Josh Rosen is a good example, and there are a lot of them throughout history of players where it just hasn't worked out. And as a Josh Rosen believer coming out of college, I thought these narratives about Josh Rosen, they're unfair. It doesn't matter. He's a smart guy, whatever. And I remember meeting Josh Rosen when he was briefly with the Vikings, and we asked him about why, and I don't think this is a JJ McCarthy issue, but I think it was telling with Josh Rosen, and sometimes the things you just don't know. Coachability would be a thing you just don't know, right? But like we asked Rosen in the fact that we had a small press conference with Josh Rosen after he joined the Vikings is now like a really funny memory. But we asked him, hey, so what have you been up to? He was released by the Browns, and he said, yeah, man, I just like really enjoyed spending the time with my family and, being away from football. And it's like, okay, well, I see where this is headed, right? Like normally you would expect the answer of I was dying inside because I just needed to get back to football. It's all I live, sleep, and breathe. And he was like, no, Thanksgiving was great. And it's like, okay, that makes sense now that the level of dedication wasn't really there for Rosen. But I also think the similarity is the processing speed was not fast enough. And I don't know whether that was preparation or not on his standpoint, but I remember Rosen playing against the Vikings where he could throw the football really well, but it was, dude, are you going to throw the football anytime soon? And there have been a lot of those issues with JJ McCarthy as well, even in this training camp, of the time that you're holding on to the ball. And so that's where, he has to improve for sure, but also maybe a cautionary tale that if you want it, you got to keep pushing for it because a lot of players that don't truly want it, they end up out of the league fairly quickly. I'm not saying that'll happen to JJ McCarthy, but because I do think they're different guys. I do think McCarthy is committed to this, but it shows you like that processing thing is so real. And maybe it's time on task. Maybe it is just the pure number of throws. I think that's a big part of it. But if you can't get it down, teams will move on from you fairly quickly. Trey Lance is another example as well. So I haven't been in favor of that just because if you have Kyler Murray get hurt early in the season and you're asking Carson Wentz, who has been really good, by the way, the last 2 days, when he's gotten some more reps now, but you're asking him to play 13 games or something. I just think that's a lot with his injury history and the way that he plays the game. He's got a huge arm still. He can really sling it. He seems to know the offense inside and out, but he has been hit a lot in his career. And you saw last year where he's still going to think it's 2017 and try to make a play. And that's how he got banged up. So I'd be pretty concerned about that if I were the Vikings. That's one reason not to do it. Would just be what happens if someone gets hurt. Evans says absolutely gutted to see Thorson as a punter too, and thrilled to see Bredesen as fullback one. Oh, do we have did they put out the depth chart? I did not know that they put out the depth chart. I mean, it's the unofficial depth chart, but in the past we have kind of gone through that. So that's always an exciting time when they do that. But yeah, I mean, look, Thorson is probably not going to be the starting punter. It was pretty clear from talking to Matt Daniels that he felt like Thorson can absolutely boom the ball, but has to learn how to really punt the ball. Those are two different things. Booming it, just hammering it as far as it could go is amazing, but it doesn't really do you much good if the other team has a great returner and you're giving him 15 extra yards than you're supposed to for him to get a huge return off of. So it's kind of a detailed kind of thing. Deplorable Neanderthal, is it pretty standard for the defense and offense to coordinate which plays to run, or do they like to surprise each other like a scrimmage? I'm sure it's a mix, but just curious. You mean in practice? In practice, they work through the things. Yeah, and there are periods, though, where it's different. So if they go out there and they say, like, let's say O'Connell and Flores have a meeting in the morning, and they go through, all right, this is what we want to get accomplished today. We want to work on, just say, bootlegs for the heck of it. We want to work on bootlegs. So what we want you to do is throw us 3 different looks on these bootlegs. And I'm sure it's more detailed than this. But all right, for this one, let's have Van Ginkel blitz. Let this one play this coverage, this one play that coverage, and the defense, okay. And then Flores might say, we want to get a look at this part of the deep crossing. So, we're going to play this against it, give this look and that kind of thing. So they'll go back and forth. But then there will be other periods of practice where situational, where it's, Flores is on one side with his thing messaging into Blake Cashman. Here's the defensive call. And then Kevin O'Connell is sending in the call to Kyler Murray, and they're just going to go at it like they're calling a real game. So it's a little bit mix and match when it comes to that. But it's a lot of, especially early in camp, it's very much by design of like, this is what we need to practice. This is what you need to practice. And let's have it match up. Not necessarily, hey, we're just going to send all these blitzes. And that's why judging it can be difficult, because if you're O'Connell, you might say, this is what we need to get installed. And we wouldn't really call this play against that defense, but that's what you need to get installed. So let's just do it anyway. And we'll see how we respond to it. I'm sure there's some, crossover where it's, difficult when it comes like that. BM says, I actually think that JJ knows where to throw the ball. He refuses to throw it to a spot where he doesn't see the guy open first, which is pretty much a death knell to a career unless he changes. That's the anticipation issue, which I don't know that there's any quarterback in the NFL, maybe Josh Allen, who doesn't throw with a lot of anticipation. Allen throws at 7,000 million miles an hour, but he still has to throw, leading his wide receivers often as well. So that's been an issue with McCarthy. And I think it really is the biggest difference between college and the NFL is in college, you can just, throw it right to the wide open guy. Guys are wide open all the time. And that's your offense. Not that he never made tight window throws or anticipation throws. He did, but you have to do it on almost every play a lot of times in the NFL. And the issue is, like, he's thrown some layered balls. He's thrown some anticipation balls. And I think some of it too is the more you've practiced it, the more you know it inside and out, you start to get that under your feet as well. And you start to trust it as well. But how many practices can you really do it on? I mean, how many throws do you really get in the first couple of days of training camp? I just think it's going to take more time in order to get there. Let's see. BM, the evidence is that McCarthy relatively knows the offense, just can't / refuse to throw to a spot before a guy breaks open. It's a lot harder than it looks, but it is something that, when they drafted him, probably knew that he was going to have to learn that on the fly and missed an entire year of practice. And I'll always wonder how that would have gone, or if it's natural. It may just be a natural thing of the small differences between some NFL quarterbacks. Because who's brilliant at this is Brock Purdy, and he was a 7th round pick, and he's a really good starter. So, sometimes we just don't fully understand these things and when they could potentially click. Nick says, I would drive McCarthy to Detroit for a 4th. I mean, Detroit does need a backup quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater retired. They have Josh Dobbs. And if there was an injury to Jared Goff, they would be in screwed land with Dobbs trying to play in that offense, which has so much to do very similarly to the Vikings with rhythm and timing and everything else. And Goff is the perfect quarterback for it, where Dobbs is more of a playmaking type of quarterback. He's not a great fit, or at least is not a clone of their starting quarterback. And you saw when he was with the Vikings, he's good for a couple games, but he's not somebody that you could start for a full season. Do you want to trade him within the division? That would be really, really strong evidence that they don't believe in him if you were trying to trade him within the division. I think that the teams that should look at JJ McCarthy, if they put him out in the trade market, would be your Miami, your New York Jets, your Arizona Cardinals, your Cleveland Browns, like the four corners of pathetic franchises in the NFL. They should look for any quarterback possible. But you're right to say that teams that don't have a backup quarterback should also be looking, because he's going to be better than a lot of backup quarterbacks. Purple Kool-Aid, the short passing game and run game are back in vogue in the NFL after teams adjusted to the Chiefs and Dolphins throwing deep consistently. The ever-changing organism that is football. That's very well said, Purple Kool-Aid. And we have seen that increase in the quick passing game for sure. Thank you, Carrot Khan, for the super chat. Question is, big picture, does Kyler Murray put us in a Super Bowl window? If not, what does? Is there an argument to be good enough to make the playoffs versus resetting the roster? I will say this, the longer term questions are very hard to answer because we don't know what this is going to look like. All I can say to that is that when you look at some of the other quarterbacks in the NFC, when you look at somebody like the San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles, where they've had quarterbacks that are not necessarily perfect, maybe even undersized, that they have been able to build rosters strong enough to compete for Super Bowls. and one of them got a Super Bowl. One of them came pretty darn close, was in overtime with the Kansas City Chiefs. So is it possible to take a quarterback of this level and get him to the Super Bowl if you build a strong enough team? Yes, it is. Because the NFL only put Jalen Hurts as the 17th best quarterback in the league. That's not a far cry. In fact, that's exactly where they were, with Kyler Murray, the rest of the league, where they were with him over the last few years before this year. Arbaz said more respect for me after watching practice today for being able to track it. Well, I've done it for a long time. I have done it for a long time. So I've seen many a practice. What I will say was difficult was that I want to watch so many other players. So now I'm getting a chance to watch more players because I would look at the alignment first, who's out there, and make notes of that for who's out there. And then once the quarterback is dropping back, I'm watching the quarterback. I'm watching the football fly, not necessarily always seeing who got the pressure, who did this or that or the other thing. It was like really focused on where that was going. And the one thing that was probably the hardest was to be able to tell, and it still is it 15, 17, 23 yards? That's not an easy thing to tell from where I'm standing. But in terms of, was the throw accurate? That's pretty easy to figure out. We can see really well for, was the throw accurate? Was it on point? Was the timing good? Axton, how is my favorite rookie, Damon Claiborne, doing? I think the last few days he's really showed up. I think we're starting to see Damon Claiborne get comfortable in this run game, and there's something he does every day with the speed and agility that's very real, and it looks like his confidence is improving. And you talk about it, if you were making a list of the most interesting players to watch in preseason, spoiler, that may be a future, very soon podcast, because I'm not sure how much they're going to do tomorrow going into a preseason game, but in practice. So that may be the podcast tomorrow. But for sure, Damon Claiborne is way up at the top of the list for the most interesting players, because you want to see, does it look like he gets it? And does it look like this translates over to the real game and the real game speed? Because in practice, it definitely makes your eyes pop out for sure. I don't think that the reason why they're not playing Caleb Banks a lot is to not put tape out on him. I think it's because he had a foot injury that kept him out for OTAs and minicamp, and they're really just starting to ramp him up as much as possible. And it did look like he got a fair amount of work today. It just seems that development is going to have to be one of those things. Like, there are going to have to be moments of, he's got to improve, and they have to be patient. And it isn't like you can just toss him in. At this moment, it looks this way. The season starts in a month, so things can change. It just looks like for now, you are going to have to go in with reasonable expectations of, he might not just come in and absolutely throttle everybody in the first day. Axton, wonder if Jake Golday will start at some point in the season. Even if it is not starting, I think that Jake Golday is going to have a role on this team pretty quickly, that he'll find his way onto the field fairly quickly, because his development has happened, I think, quite fast. He's played a ton of reps in the lead up to the season here and in training camp. And he has been on the outside. He's been on the inside. They've been really loading him up with as much information as he could get. He's been on special teams and learning special teams for the very first time. So I look at Golday as, being very interesting depth for sure for the Vikings. But, when it comes to whether he could start right away, I think it's going to be Wilson and Cashman. Carrot Khan asking about the Super Bowl window. And that's all it is to me, is when you look at to circle back to your question, when you look at the model to win in the NFL, there are two ways to do it. You look at the Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes and you build around them, and Matthew Stafford, and these are very expensive, but they're amazing quarterbacks. So, like, hey, that's great. And you build your team around. You can make a lot more mistakes when you have those guys. You can not draft very good wide receivers if you're the Bills or whatever else it might be. Have the worst special teams in football like the Rams did, and you're still going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl because your quarterback is that freaking good. And then there's the other way, which is to have your quarterback be good enough and have a great roster. And that's worked for a lot of different teams. But the margins are thin on that because in the NFC, a lot of teams are making that same argument. A lot of teams are saying, hey, we got a good enough team if our quarterback just gives us enough, right? And that was Sam Darnold last year, and he gave him more than enough in the NFC Championship game to get them to the Super Bowl. So I would look at it as we're going to find out exactly where Kyler is as the season goes along. This is a guy who has been a little bit of an enigma throughout his career. Bad franchise, yes. Maybe not the best coaching or teammates, yes. But inconsistency that's been very real for him. And if you have total inconsistency at the quarterback position with Kyler throughout this year and you go 9-8 because he has 9 good games and 8 terrible games, well, then there's not really a Super Bowl window for something like that. But if he's much more consistent with really good teammates and good coaching, if that's the case, then you have a chance to kind of put him in that same bucket as the Bo Nix and, the Jalen Hurts of a really talented quarterback. And he's probably got more talent than both of those guys in terms of raw skill, but they need to be elevated by the things that are around them. And I think the same thing is true for Kyler Murray. Now, during Kirk's era, one of the issues was they couldn't build that team around him. I think that it is much more possible to do that, especially with a lot of draft picks starting to click. That was something that was, not talked about maybe enough. I mean, I think we did when, Rick Spielman was let go. Kwesi was always talked about as, being the bad drafter. Well, now we're starting to see some of Kwesi's picks work out, which is kind of ironic, but Rick had a really bad run of draft picks. And if you were going to succeed with Kirk making as much money as he did, you needed to crush the draft. That's why Jared Goff has been so good in part in Detroit. And there's a comp there, right? Hey, his team got rid of him and his team added draft capital to send to Detroit to get rid of him. And I still see sometimes in the chat, oh, the Cardinals got rid of Murray. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know they got Stafford back, but like the fact that a couple of quarterbacks who have had this much success, their teams moved on. They weren't their first team, tells you something about it. But with Jared Goff, it might be a good comp with Kyler Murray, a flawed but very good quarterback, and they drafted really well. Now, recently, they have not drafted quite as well, and it's been problematic for Detroit. And even last year, Goff maybe wasn't quite the same. So it's a delicate balance, and you have to hit on those young players because around Kirk, they missed on a lot of draft picks. They hit on Jefferson, they hit on Darisaw, they hit on Bynum and Metellus, but there wasn't a lot else. So that meant cheap talent was hard to come by. It creates a thin roster. This is why Seattle's had, so much success. So, anyway, BM, enough about JJ being young. Many young guys are mature enough to get it right out of the gate. It's not an excuse. Yeah, I think maturity when it comes to getting it at the pro level can take different people different amounts of time. The inexperience is not always a great excuse because there are a lot of quarterbacks who have come in their first 10 games and played really well. I don't know how many of them suffered the type of injury he has, but there is now into year 3. I think we're moving on from the idea that, he is just super, super young and so forth. And by real life standards, oh my gosh, yes, very, very young. But by pro sports standards, by year 3, you've been around it long enough to kind of understand how this works. So if that was part of the issue last year, that he was not taking the coaching very well and he was trying to sort of make demands about how things should be done to Kevin O'Connell and the offensive staff, as it was reported by Tyler Dunn, it's just not going to work very well. Like, these things are designed the way they're designed for a reason. And the reason that, you'll see Kyle Shanahan be able to get the most out of his players and everything else is because they execute what's designed. The plays work if you're able to run them. And even if it's not perfect for you, It's what your job is to listen to the coaching, go out, do your best to execute, and then go back to the drawing board if you have to. So that might be just not really fully getting it of how the NFL really works. Because it's such a big change from college. And it felt like at times last year that McCarthy was still in college. And it felt like the first press conference we saw from him this year in the spring felt like someone who was still in college. And then we've seen throughout the summer that, his approach to yesterday, his approach to his other press conference when they got back to training camp, I thought were very professional. People can grow very quickly at a young age. So it doesn't have to be a death knell that something like this went on, but it does have to be something where he looks himself in the mirror and says, I've got to be better. I've got to be different. I've got to grow and that kind of thing. So we'll see how much they decide that he has grown far enough to not want to move on from him, or maybe they might not feel like they can get the type of return that would make it worth it versus still having him on the roster. But it is a question now that Wentz is getting a fair number of reps. Is he going to be QB2 on the first day of the season? Because there might be an argument for that not being the case. Because would you trust Wentz to come into a game and execute the game plan? That depends on how much JJ McCarthy has shown them so far. Mr. Mayor, even if you're talking about Brian Flores and he'll get a head coaching job again. I saw, someone in the chat asking about his, who on the staff could take over. I mean, this is, for me, it's not likely to happen. Came back here with a huge contract, clearly loves it here. Clearly the family is worked out here, the organization, working with O'Connell, all those things. But it's also, that's much more of a January, February type of question, if that's possible, than it is for right now. Right now, I don't know who on the staff would be someone to take over, but Flores isn't getting a head coaching job tomorrow. So, I don't know. Jared said, wish JJ had a different throwing motion. The best passers have a high release and finish over the top. He throws a little on the lower side, probably why so many batted balls. Could be. Also think the pocket presence is a big part of that as well. I also find it fascinating that, and maybe this is just how we are as a society, is there's been the phases of grieving, you've ever heard that? There's the acceptance and there's the denial, and I don't know what order they're supposed to be in, but it feels like this is what happens when a quarterback goes wrong, because we can definitely say that year 3 losing a quarterback competition is, that the B word is very rude to me, and I don't like it because guys can have long careers. To just say, oh, that guy's bust and that's it. It's very dismissive. And we saw Darnold get called that a lot. It doesn't, I don't think it really captures the reality, right? But year 3, that's getting knocked down all the way to the ground. That is not a TKO. That is, though, the referee is starting the count in terms of, hey, this did not work out for you. And for sure it did not work out. The fact that you had to go to somebody else says for sure that it didn't turn out. It's interesting to me, though, that it's more of a discussion of why it didn't work out than it is that Kyler has come back and had these 2 great practices and looked really, really good. And it makes me kind of want to talk about how he's adapting to Kevin O'Connell's offense, and the early returns look to me like overall, I know there's several bad practices but now, you're talking about 4 or 5 absolutely excellent practices from Kyler Murray, including the 2 in the last 2 days after he becomes QB1, and starts to make you think about what the ceiling could be potentially for the offense with Kyler Murray. And that's where you talk about that Super Bowl window. Are you in your Super Bowl window? Who knows? Seattle wasn't necessarily looked at as that last year. And I don't know if San Francisco was when, Brock Purdy took over. I know that they had a great team that had gone deep into the playoffs the year before, but did anyone look at, oh, well, now that you've got Purdy, you're good to go? I think that a lot of people looked at that as, well, Purdy is a nice placeholder for the next person. Or even with Jalen Hurts, they looked into trading for Russell Wilson, and Hurts ends up getting them a Super Bowl ring. So it's hard to say until we actually see it out there. But in terms of now that we have 12 days of practice, And 2 of them have been outstanding these last 2 days, where the completion percentage is probably 85%. And I have 2 negative throws over the last 2 days and a number of positive throws. And he's looked at on point that it looks like it starts to click. And if it does, and if it really does click with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, this thing could open up the door to, I don't want to go down the road and say, oh yeah, like paying him this much money or whatever else, but them having the type of offense that's a little more complete than it's ever been, has a running element to the quarterback that they've never had before, has, you know, more of a dynamic part to it. And that also made me think about, and we'll see how this works out, is like when we get to the regular season of the short passing versus deep passing, because, you know, the deep passing has been very good overall. And that wasn't something that worked out recently with the Arizona Cardinals. Was that scheme, or was that, you know, something to do with the wide receivers, which I think is very, very possible. And I've been, you know, trying to poke around the data and like thought about, well, you know, how much does the receivers really impact what happens once the ball goes up in the air? I saw Mr. Mayor talking about Charles Demings, and we talk about a preseason preview and the FanDuel question of the day, you know, the Vikings being favored by 2.5 points on FanDuel, but like, who are you looking for? What are you interested in? Charles Demings also makes that list very high. I mean, you could just say the rookie class, but Demings in particular has come into training camp and looked like a guy who was not a 5th round pick by any means. His maturity as a person is very impressive. He has a huge personality, but also very serious in terms of how much he has put into this already. The work ethic and the drive and the competitiveness that we see from him on a play-to-play basis when he gets up and starts pressing people, when now they're even, and they have at times used him a little bit in the slot. You know, I think maybe to see just what that looks like in space for him. And, you know, that doesn't mean he's going to start right away, but it means that this is the first time that they have really had a promising young corner in quite some time. Snowy, I did not see yet the KOC interview with Kendricks and Barr. Did you like that? Oh, his response implied that the battle wasn't close. I mean, I don't know if he would actually try to do that. Maybe that's just knowing what we know now. You can kind of hear that. I haven't watched it yet, though. I love that they're doing it. I love that Barr and Kendricks are doing this podcast, because those two guys are just really, really smart, and they absolutely love each other. Best friends. They live near each other in LA. I mean, they went to UCLA. They played for the Vikings, and their chemistry is incredible. And they're two of my favorite guys to cover while they were here. Sean says the pushback to McCarthy isn't shocking. He constantly references Jim Harbaugh. Seems like I missed the last part of that. Sorry. When so many comments are in, it kind of cuts them off sometimes. And I apologize for that if that happens. But, you know, look, I mean, when it comes to what we heard and what we saw last year, it matches up with what Tyler Dunn reported, that we saw times where it felt like he was out there doing his own thing a little bit. And if that's Brett Favre out there doing his own thing, then okay, that's very much forgivable. But if it's a guy out there doing his own thing that has more picks than touchdowns, or, you know, and it was getting sacked, I don't know, did he finish with that? But it was getting sacked as much as he was and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you're not in a position to be able to act that way. But you also sometimes have to go through things and learn lessons the hard way. Not every single person who comes into the league fully gets it right away. And, you know, with JJ McCarthy, he has shown, I think, over the summer, a get it factor. I think he put in a lot of effort. I think he competed very hard in this competition, and he's, at least in front of the media, acted in a very professional type of manner. So if that's what's been going on behind the scenes, then he's got a chance to mature and grow and develop from this. It doesn't have to be the end of the story for him. From a data perspective, from a research history perspective, it very rarely turns itself around quick. So you got to have a longer type of viewpoint if you are JJ McCarthy in terms of your development. Let's see. you guys are talking about what they could get potentially back from for JJ McCarthy. I mean, it really depends on how desperate someone would be for a backup. They got a fifth for Sam Howell. You got to do better than that. Or if a team is very intrigued by him as a starting quarterback, teams really don't ever get rid of those old scouting reports. So if they loved him coming out, but the problem is the Vikings have a good reputation. If the Vikings were the Browns, someone would be like, I don't know, the Browns probably screwed it up. Let's give it a shot. I don't think that happens with the Vikings. Madsen Music says PFF has the Vikings offensive line 12th ahead of the Packers and Lions. Promising. You know what? I think that this offensive line, if healthy, which it has been through the entire camp until we've seen Fries out the last few days. Unfortunately, one of the issues with asking KOC about the quarterback position endlessly the other day is we get a chance to ask him about some of the injury updates. So hopefully we'll get those from Kevin O'Connell, even if it's after the preseason game or whatever it might be. But if they are a healthy offensive line, I think that Fries coming back from his injury is a good thing. And Darisaw is the biggest thing. That's the guy who can swing it all. Even if there is a question about what can happen at the center position, Brandel was not terrible last year. He struggled in those first two games, but down the stretch, he was an average center for the rest of the season. If he can snap it okay, which wasn't an issue today, but it has been at times, if he can snap it okay, and if he can pass protect okay, even if the run game is not perfect for Blake Brandel, being the size that he is and being a former tackle, maybe it might be difficult to get under guys' pads and stuff like that. Even if there are issues, the rest of these guys have a lot of talent. I think Donovan Jackson has looked really good coming back. I think he came back looking stronger than when he first got there. Eric, do you think they're still looking at bringing in a veteran pass rusher? Yeah, I mean, I don't know because they've had this competition, and I think the preseason games could be very telling. I would suspect that the answer is yes. Like if you're Nolan Teasley, that you have got to be putting those guys on your radar, whether it's Leonard Floyd or whether it's somebody else from another team that could potentially get signed. Who was it? Someone just was it Emmanuel Agba, who's been around the league? Did he just, he signed somewhere, or somebody did with the Kansas City Chiefs that's a pass rusher? It's like, sometimes this happens where we're a month out of the season. You still see people signing from time to time, but we also get to the end of training camp and teams will look at a veteran who didn't perform at the same level that they expected, like when the Vikings cut B-Rob, or a younger player beat them out like Harrison Phillips. I mean, the Jets are an absolute laughingstock, but they did well in that trade to get a starting defensive tackle who played well last year. That was maybe a worse trade than Adam Thielen, to get rid of somebody who could be very useful for you and could still be useful for you today. But anyway, that one we kind of looked over because gestures at quarterback situation and all the other disasters. But that was one that was turned out to not be a very good trade. I understand why they did it, but it was not good. So there is another player somewhere in the league that, would have maybe this, the same thing where they're moving on from their veteran because of young players. So, Mr. Mayor, why is it in every coach press conference people ask about literally everyone's leadership? Yeah. I mean, I think that in part it's sort of like, can you tell us about their personality more than anything is what that's about. Rather than just how they're a leader specifically, but like, what are they like? And put it in football-y terms. I think that's really what it is. Is Chuck Demings the leader of the Vikings defense? No, but like, has he had an immediate impact on their energy and stuff because of his personality? And apparently he's a very good rapper and they've enjoyed that part of him. And apparently he leads them in team prayers and stuff like that. And that's, being a part of the environment is a big deal, and how you fit into it and the energy you bring and the positivity, like to a team and a room, it matters. So I think it's just using that word to kind of broad stroke, like, what does he do football wise related to his personality? Because you're not asking, hey, Does he like, Netflix? That you're asking in football terms, not just like, what are his off-field interests? You know what I mean? So, Eric, medical science unfortunately does not have a way to put Andrew Luck's mind inside of JJ's body. I would even say put Max Brosmer's mind inside of JJ's body. Mr. Mayor would take Anthony Richardson. At least he has a superpower as a quarterback out of the draft. JJ McCarthy's superpower was supposed to be his brains and coachability. This is only when we talk about McCarthy being traded, it's only ever through the context of if the people inside the building are just throwing up their hands. Hey, this is it. Like, we're done. Like, we just can't do this anymore. If that's the case, it might be that way in Indianapolis too. Although there seem to be concerns that Anthony Richardson can't see as well as he used to after he had that injury with the band, which is really concerning. And that guy is another one who's had everything go wrong. And I've looked at Anthony Richardson the same way, like a young talent who just didn't refine his throwing enough, in part because injuries slowed him down. And then also kind of didn't get it as the leader of a team, just how important this is. These franchises are worth $10 billion and you are the centerpiece of it. You have to keep that in mind at all times, which I'm not sure that everyone is capable of understanding the magnitude of this thing, right? And that, this is a job and the coach is a manager and like, this is how it really works in the real world. It's not just vibes like college. Andrew, do you think the run game would be more beneficial for JJ, or does he get thrown eventually, given that it's a run heavy offense at Michigan? I think that a run game would benefit anyone. If it was last year, although let's be honest about it, they did run first last year when JJ McCarthy was in at the end of the year. He won several games where he threw for like 160 yards. They were playing Nick Vannett in a game, who was a third string blocking tight end, and a really nice guy, by the way. And I wrote a story on him about being a journeyman blocking tight end. But they were a run first offense already and did have some success doing so with McCarthy. But I think if there was, the new running game was thriving, it'll help any quarterback. So even if McCarthy got in, you would be looking, if they had to play McCarthy, they would know much more now what type of, performance you would be looking at of a run first offense, and low volume type of passing, looking to hit, downfield passes that he's comfortable with and stuff like that, that's how they pared down the offense last year. Scamping around, need to know Murray's RPMs. I did see that with Hard Knocks, and lots of evidence that Sam Darnold throws a good ball. I'll probably every once in a while, for the rest of the time that I cover this team or talk football or just live, it'll come into my mind, that guy was perfect. He was perfect for KOC. He was perfect right just the way he was, with the RPMs and how he throws the football and the deep shots and how he hung in the pocket. And you couldn't have, and the fact that he could also make plays out of structure, the game against Seattle, the game against Atlanta, couldn't have drawn it up much better for this coach. And now we're asking, hey, can you adapt your offense to somebody who might not be the perfect fit, but such is life for the Minnesota Vikings. I will say that, had they brought back Sam Darnold, I do think that it would have been really good for JJ McCarthy last year to develop. I also think that Minnesota Vikings fans would have thrown an absolute hissy fit and would have been so angry that they brought him back after those playoff games. And maybe things don't turn out the same way, not because of the fans, but I don't know, like people in the building who didn't trust him after that. Like, things that go wrong in the playoffs can have reverberations. And you look at the, Seattle Seahawks and just how not running Marshawn Lynch at the goal line and what that caused for them over the years. When he was going to Seattle, it was total fresh start for him, and that probably did play a role in his success. Although if he was last year the 10th best quarterback in the league or something, and the Vikings had that, who knows what they could have done in the postseason with that defense. We'll never know. Mad Zen Music. Watch JJ and Kyler preseason slow motion snaps. Sorry, I missed that. I missed that one. Sorry. If you were getting to like the way that they go through reads, I don't know if that's what you were getting to, but I think that's the biggest thing I noticed with the quarterbacks, aside from Murray's very precise accuracy on intermediate and short stuff, especially the short stuff is just spot on time and time again for Kyler Murray. But how fast they get through those reads is very different when you watch both of them in terms of their reps. Joe, yeah, I mean, when it comes to the whose fault is it anyway, whether it was Kwesi or whether it was O'Connell, and this person says this, and Chris Carter said he didn't want this guy and everything else. And look, they had a choice between two quarterbacks because of where they were drafting. And for sure, O'Connell has been fairly upfront with the fact that they wanted Daniel Jones to come back. So we know that he wanted competition for JJ McCarthy last year. I would also say that once again, if Daniel Jones had won that competition, you guys might have gone to US Bank Stadium and tried to burn it down. Like, we need to also remember when we're talking about them and how they made these mistakes, that there were a very, very large amount of people who thought that McCarthy was just going to be better than Sam Darnold instantly. And it didn't work out. Not that I'm blaming you. It's their job to make the right decision. It's just that you could see how they got there logically with the JJ McCarthy decision. But man, when you watch Super Bowl champion Sam Darnold throwing that football, you're like, yep, that one was right here, throwing it to number 18. So that seems like a pretty good thing. Isaiah, have you watched any of the Barr and Kendrick's podcast? They put out some great content lately. I've only a little bit, only like some of the clips. These training camp days are kind of long. It's on like list of things to do, to go back and listen to more of their stuff with Justin Jefferson and with KOC for sure. But just love the fact that they're doing it. Love it for you guys. I mean, to really get to see Kendricks and Barr and who they are and their senses of humor and their stories and all those things. That's why podcasting is awesome. Kay says people have to accept that some quarterbacks are busts, just like Seen is a first-round safety bust, or Tony Mandarich. Quite a collection of names there with Lewis Seen and Tony Mandarich that you went with, Kay. So I do agree that, yes, some quarterbacks are just busts. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way that you think it's going to. And sometimes it is not anywhere as interesting as we want it to be. We want there to be a 30 for 30 on every player who didn't work out. I remember writing a huge article about why Laquan Treadwell didn't work out. And it was one of the most clicked things I ever wrote. And it was like, wait, you guys needed more information on this? I mean, like, you saw him. He just didn't run the routes very well. I mean, with some positions, it's like there's a huge mystery. Like, and you can quote Mike Zimmer sometimes and just say, "Did you see the games?" Like, that's why he's not the starting quarterback, in part because all those issues don't just get resolved in a day. They're going to take time, and you don't really ever know. That's one thing I know for sure, though. Whether it's Lewis Seen or JJ McCarthy, you never really know what's going to happen until someone actually gets in the game. And when it's not going well, it is hard to watch. It was hard to watch practices where Lewis Seen was with the third team. It was like, jeez, from first round pick, and this is just not working. And at times it's been that way with JJ McCarthy too. Quarterbacks are always given more latitude because it's a lot more complicated, a lot more patience and forgiveness. And you always need quarterbacks. So people are always trying to go out and give them second chances. So it feels like they never go away. And sometimes they're resurrected throughout history. And that could definitely happen here. I think that's the biggest difference between, hey, he's just a bust. Like, well, it's a longer career for a quarterback than it is for a safety that doesn't work out pretty early. Skull Shadow, what do you think of potential trade for a conditional 2029 draft pick determined by success or failure? 2029 is way out into the future, so I don't know about that, but conditional would probably be something that they might consider. I think if you're looking at it right now, you're asking for a fourth round pick. If you are completely toast, it's just that this has not worked, it's over, and you got to send him somewhere else because it's just, he's never going to play here again. I don't know that we should be at a point where it's gotten that bad, but maybe behind the scenes, that's where, we don't really know. Mr. Mayor, transport me back to time where they'd be begging to try Christian Ponder for a few more seasons. Yeah, and Tavares Jackson, I think, was actually a lot like JJ McCarthy, really. Because just the accuracy, like he was likable, he was athletic, just the accuracy, just could not get it down. Purple Kool-Aid, Caleb Banks sounds like he might be another Turner, hyper athletic, but will need some time to learn the defense, which will also allow him to get fully healthy. I completely agree that we should not go into the season saying if Caleb Banks doesn't get 7 sacks and doesn't play 590 snaps, that this was a terrible draft pick or anything else. I respect that Brian Flores has a wider view on these guys. And the way he was talking about Isaiah Loudermilk, I could just hear it already of Isaiah Loudermilk is playing over Caleb Banks. He's a bust. What is going on? I mean, this is how we react to stuff. After 1 year for players, but I don't think that Brian Flores cares how people react to stuff based on his comments today, how he was saying, look, the outside world is telling you you're the best player of all time. When you're a first round draft pick, you're going to be a big superstar, but I don't look at it that way. It takes a lot of work. And it is also one of the most high IQ and mental load, difficult positions that people don't understand. I think because some of these guys are absolute freaks like Caleb Banks. It's like, just step in there and throw everybody and get a tackle. But there is so much to it. Understanding formations, understanding tendencies, learning how to watch tape and take things away from the opponent that you're going to face, your pregame scouts and everything else, understanding which plays you need to move bodies and which plays you need to penetrate. And there's a lot going on there for Caleb Banks. And when he's drafted, it's like, okay, this is, we talked about it as boom or bust. I think that's a little overstated because he could still be a good player without being a boom. And, he could still be a below average player who starts without being a total bust, or I shouldn't say below average player, but an average player for his draft status and be okay. So there's a wider spectrum, I think, than we've talked about it. But I think we all knew, though, this is a guy who's barely played, college football 2024 and then had to sit out and now is coming into the National Football League and learning. And it sounds like, he wants to learn and is doing everything he's asked to do. And he's going through a lot of different drills and everything else. But it feels like Flores is sending up a little bit of a smoke signal of, guys, I don't want to hear you asking me every single week about why he's not playing, because I told you that I'm patient with rookies, which he also told us during Dallas Turner. So I agree with that for sure. Arbaz, so when I was watching today, I thought the D-line was winning a lot. Is that just because ones versus twos or JJ? No, yeah. I mean, when ones are playing twos, there's absolutely a mismatch there. Also, I think, they've got some really good players. Dallas Turner's had a great camp. I think that Dallas Turner has really put together an excellent camp, and you see it when he plays the twos. It's not even bad players he's going against. A third-round pick sometimes in Tiernan, or it's Ryan Vandemark who's played in the league before, and he is flying out there. They also send a lot of different rushes in practice to give those guys looks at it and get Flores, his guys practice. So that's part of it. What you see sometimes is some crazy looks. So I'll tell you one today, and this is like how even the coverage can impact what you see from the defensive line. Is there was a look today where they sent a safety, I think it was Theo Jackson, all the way from the safety position, and he starts creeping up to the line of scrimmage, then blitzes, and Byron Murphy Jr. drops back into a safety position. So it was like, wait a minute, where did this come from? Like they sort of switched a little bit of where they were lined up, and then he's dropping back, and it was like, whoa. So I think that's definitely part of it, is those different looks in coverage and blitzes. But also I really do believe that the defensive line has done a good job. Levi Drake Rodriguez has looked very strong. And Ty Ingram Dawkins is out there because he's shown them that he deserves to be out there. He was supposed to mix and match at outside linebacker. He hasn't really at all. He's basically been the 3-4 defensive end, and he's been doing well at it. And probably one of the guys you saw is Jalen Redmond. I think Jalen Redmond is one of the best practice players, and he's good in the games. but I think he's one of the best practice players on this team, where every day it seems like that guy's getting in the backfield. So I believe that they've had a really good result here from the front seven, from, having a good linebacker group in general to start with and adding sort of Jamal Adams to that, even though he's played safety lately. And then the way that the young defensive linemen have played, it's sort of, I don't know, just sort of made me chuckle a little bit about the drafts. And sometimes we go, oh my gosh, they've drafted nothing. And then all of a sudden a couple guys develop and you're like, well, except for that guy and that guy and that guy who developed, because it takes a little while, right? Sometimes it does. Let's see. You guys debating about which quarterbacks Kevin O'Connell almost got killed. Well, it actually is a big question, because when we think about the situations with Wentz and with Max Brosmer, well, Wentz actually got hurt because he was trying to run full speed into a linebacker who's like 22 years old and is really good, and he got hurt that way. But even when Carson Wentz was hurt, they were still throwing the ball a lot and running their offense. And even as Max Brosmer was playing in his first game ever as an undrafted free agent against the Super Bowl champion defense, they're still throwing in the red zone. That's where you have to shift a little bit of the mentality for Kyler Murray, I think. I think that there are 10 plays within a given season where you can point out and go, this shifted the game because you just didn't play it safe, that you just didn't kind of hunker down and take what you had. And I think you still have to do that with Kyler Murray at times. And so the other part is too, the number of quarterback hits that have been taken by Vikings quarterbacks. I think this was a Alec Lewis stat where he said it's like they're number one. And I know they're up there with sacks, that they have taken some of the most sacks in the NFL. And eventually that does become a scheme thing. When Sam Darnold goes from 40 something to 20 something, yes, the offensive line for Seattle was good, but it was not unbelievable in pass protection. It was a lot schemed. And you don't want Kyler Murray taking hits at all, really. And you definitely don't want him sitting in the pocket, hanging in, and letting a big giant guy crunch him. Like, that's not what you should be looking to do. So the adjustments, I think, will tell us a lot about, like, are they going to be a team that gets rid of the football quicker? Are they going to, when they get in certain situations where it could be risky to pass the football, are you still going to push the pass button and say, whatever, man? Or are you going to now kind of lean a little bit more? Because the Brosmer interception that he threw that ruined that game, now they were not going to win it, but that really ruined their chances to make it even slightly interesting. Just run a screen, right? Just run a screen, just hand off, just do something there where it's, don't mess it up and get some points. And instead, like, nope, we're going to have Max Brosmer give it a shot here and get sacked and throw it away, or not get sacked, but throw it directly to Ernest, was that Ernest Jones? Yeah, I think so, right? Linebacker, and have DeMarcus Lawrence throw him and stuff. Like, those things have happened too much during KOC. He's got to think about that really closely with Kyler Murray, that he can make you think sometimes, because Murray throws the ball so well, oh, I can just have him throw it all the time. But eventually that gets a little bit revealed. I do agree that, Carson Wentz was a gamer. He deserves a lot of credit for what happened last year. I mean, really, to me, went 2-2 and had no chance to win that game that he should not have been in. Purple Kool-Aid, can you imagine Goff in the Viking system? That would be a show. I mean, it's not that different from what they were doing, except for with a run game to get him to a top 5. But yeah, I mean, you see it with them. It's execution. If you have a quarterback who can just execute what you're asking him to do, you can get a pretty darn far way. The issue with Goff has always been make that one extra play that he really can't make. But man, I mean, if we're criticizing Jared Goff after going to a Super Bowl, going to an NFC championship game, having 4 straight top 5 offense, it's like, yeah, if he was here, I think you would see a lot of the same stuff with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. I still think the Vikings receivers are better than, I mean, Laporta is pretty darn good, but I would still take the Vikings over Detroit by a small shade. A small shade. Madsen, someone said that the Vikings made a big offer for Drake May. That was reported on draft night 2024. I don't think they ever really hid away from the fact that they had tried to trade up there. But we don't have to relive the draft. I'm not a huge fan of saying it is what it is because that's what players always say, but they were never getting Drake May. Not when they got to the point that they were in the draft. That was just not happening. The New England Patriots also got a big offer from the New York Giants to move up one spot, and they said, no, we're taking Drake May. So the Vikings, probably looked at May as a better prospect. He was. The NFL made it clear that he was because he was drafted way ahead of J.J. McCarthy. But that doesn't mean that that's, totally the reason why this went sideways. Sometimes the fifth quarterback drafted, Lamar Jackson, has been the best or the second best in a draft class. I mean, I think that, when it comes to that pick, they missed one important thing, which was that JJ McCarthy was going to need a ton of work on a team that was ready to win. But I don't think they knew the team was ready to win. I think they were looking at it like, well, let's get him in here, develop him. And then when the team is ready to win, he'll be there. But they were ready to win faster than expected, and it didn't work out. If you were to go do it again, you would take Bo Nix. Maybe it was considered a lower ceiling with Bo Nix, but he had a lot more experience and would have been able to step in right away and do a lot more. I also think that Sean Payton's theory has been protect Bo Nix as much as possible and then make a couple plays a game where, Kevin O'Connell has always kind of asked his quarterbacks to go grip it and rip it. Mr. Mayor, thanks for the long podcast. Don't know how you do it. Oh, well, football. We're only talking about football. It's very easy to do, but I am glad to have been doing them every night. And there's going to be a lot of this during the regular season as well. I'm sure that I'll maybe take a deep breath from doing them almost every day soon because there's going to be some more days off. But, the plan is to do a lot of these during the regular season for, several hours at a time, just because I love talking football with you guys. Would not rather be anywhere else doing anything else than talking football. Andrew Jones, that's the outfielder. Aaron Jones wandered by me today and said, how you doing? And I said, football. Got a huge smile on his face. Everybody loves it. Max Powers, does Damon Claiborne have Mr. Mankato locked down? Well, we need to see the preseason games. We cannot say on Mr. Mankato until we see preseason games. That guy runs for 150 yards. He's got a really good chance at it. Right now, I would say it's Charles Demings, and Gavin Bartholomew has been in the mix for that. He's had a really good training camp to this point, but Damon Claiborne every day starts to show up more and more. But we got to see, Demings make a play in a preseason game. If he gets a pick or forced fumble, runs it back for a touchdown, well, that could pretty well solidify it, I would say. Claiborne should be in the mix, and I think that there's an opportunity here for all sorts of other guys to state their case that they could potentially be Mr. Mankato. But Claiborne is getting my attention. What I've tried to say about Claiborne is that we need to be patient. We just want it now. I mean, Ty Felton, I had this really good conversation with Ty Felton, and he explained to me after practice how much he was able to take away from last year and apply it to this year. So the same can happen for someone like Claiborne. But when you actually see him touch the football, you're like, woo, they should do that in the game because it is impressive. Lenny, could it be that Murray being made the starter let him focus more and perform better in practice? Could the same be said for McCarthy if he was named the starter? Well, I don't know if the same would be said for McCarthy if he was named the starter. I really don't know, but I do think that it's possible that it allowed him to get in a rhythm passing and allowed that thing that was out there to be off of his shoulders all of a sudden and relax and focus and not be looking over his shoulder and looking at, I don't know if he's doing this, but watching how JJ performed, wondering what it means for him. Clarity of mind is probably a thing, or it might have just been that when you go from the first part of training camp to the middle part here, you really do start to shift the mindset. The mindset is not install this every day, try to get this. The offense should be pretty darn close to in, and now it's mastering it, and now it's refining it with the best players you have on the team, not onboarding people and teaching people where to line up anymore. They should know that by now. Now it's time to go really practice. And well, when Kyler Murray really practices, this guy was the number 1 draft pick for a reason, because he is accurate as heck. and is very, very talented. So we've seen that in these practices, but that might have been part of it. Now, could it have helped McCarthy? I don't know that. I do know that the practices we've seen from Kyler that have been at their best, I don't think I've ever seen practices like that from McCarthy at any point during his time here. These last two practices where the accuracy is darn near flawless, where it's just completion after completion, saw that with Darnold, saw that with Cousins. Don't know that we ever really saw that with JJ McCarthy to this point. He's had good practices, no doubt about it. And the joint practices last year were good and so forth. But in terms of like this is guys who are top 15 quarterbacks in the league, top 20 quarterbacks in the league. This is what it should look like a good chunk of the time. And then when someone has a bad practice, you're like, that was a bad practice. That's surprising. Not kind of every other day. Maybe it was a little bit of a reminder of like, yeah, there are levels to this. And one guy's been around a lot longer than the other. But I don't know. I don't have a great explanation for it. Maybe Murray doesn't either. It's just this time of year is the time where you should start really locking in. That's the best I can come up with, though. Jay, since we have the Vikings quarterback battle situated, who do you think wins the Browns and Falcons quarterback competition? I will say that it'll be Tua and it will be Deshaun Watson. I think will be the starting quarterbacks there. I think they'll go with the veteran players and they'll try to win until they can't anymore. And then they'll go to the younger guys. Skull Shadow, whoa, Coller, you can't give us hope. We've seen that movie before. Even if Murray is Cunningham 1998, something bad will happen. Yeah, this is, I totally understand. I've been around long enough and chat with you guys every night to absolutely get the mentality when it comes to Kyler Murray and to get the malaise with fans. And we felt this in 2024. And I guess that would be the examples that I would use from even the last 10 years are it has worked a few times. And yes, things have gone bad at the end, but you're in it and you're at the top of the league or the top of the division and you're giving yourself a serious chance. I know what more can you ask for is Justin Herbert, or what more can you ask for is Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or whatever. Under the given circumstances, though, if Kyler Murray works out and you have a very competitive season and you make the playoffs and you give yourself a chance, then this will have been a successful move to go with Kyler Murray over JJ McCarthy. That's what you're really looking for. And to this point, I think that in these last two practices, and the best ones he's had have exceeded my expectations for Kyler Murray. And then at other times, he's given me reason to have pause and go, the inconsistency there, like, can you do this every day and that kind of thing? Maybe that's unrealistic to ask, but it has been his career. So I think that there's enough on both sides of that argument. Like O'Connell said it perfectly. You go with Kyler Murray because of what could be. And then the next two practices, you see exactly what could be. You go, oh, that's what he means. Doesn't mean it will, because a lot of times things don't work out the way that you hope that they will in football. For 31 teams, for sure it doesn't. And it hasn't for the Vikings. So I get the cynicism. I always will. But, I balance that with, I know the history. You guys know I know the history inside and out of the Minnesota Vikings and all the things that have happened at the quarterback position with it is August. Like there's no way you can drag me into which field goal they miss. Not Will Reichert anyway. Which punt they kick short out of bounds and cost them a game or something in January, right? Ting, I don't know what's happened with Jacoby Thomas. I just know that we haven't seen him practicing in full, and we will hope to get an update on that soon. Normally, we would be talking to the coach every other day and saying, what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with that guy? It just hasn't been that way because of the QB competition, but we'll get you those updates soon enough. Just know that, it doesn't look like there's anything that's keeping him out longer term because he's been out there doing some stuff. It's just not full team stuff. BM, we can't hold Demings to high expectations. Oh, okay. You're being sarcastic. Look, everyone develops, and this goes for McCarthy. It goes for every player. Everyone develops at a different rate. Everyone comes into the NFL at a different spot. Charles Demings strikes me as a guy who has been mature for a very long time. I mean, I've heard that about him from Cody Alexander, who's been a guest on this show many times, and Coach Charles when he was in college. And he said, dude, he was just like he is now with you guys in college. Like, so driven, intelligent, great attitude. They like great teammate, all those things, super competitive. Like he said that, like I think he came in very mature. He went to Stephen F. Austin, but he came in very mature. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how that works out? I mean, you see the smile on Flores' face talking about him. You're like, wow, he's selling the guy that doesn't like to play the rookies very much, right? I mean, this is so impressive, but it doesn't work that way for everyone. And, you know, Dallas Turner, for example, halfway through his first season, I remember Flores talking about like, yeah, we had to have a real conversation, kind of sit down and talk about, you know, what he's doing in the season and keeping his body at a certain level. And then the light kind of came on for him. And once the light came on for him, it was like, oh, okay, it's on, right? But it took a while, even midway through the last season. Jay, remember the 96 questions with B-Rob? Yeah, yes, I do. I do, yes. And I saw that it came back up now that Stephon Diggs is in Washington. Okay, need to give you a reminder that the FanDuel question of the day, and some of you have been answering this, that is, and for the rewatchers of the show, the Vikings are 2.5-point favorites against the Giants this week in the preseason game on FanDuel. What are you looking forward to most in that game? And we will try tonight to not have an abrupt ending. If you guys were watching last night, my power went out for like 2 hours. I was like, what do I do? And so there was nothing I could do. But hopefully that doesn't happen. It was so random. It's like not like there was a storm or anything. Who would ever think I'm sitting here just talking? Maybe the football talk got too hot. Maybe the comment section was too hot last night after McCarthy, doesn't get the job. It shut off the power for the whole neighborhood, your comments. All right, back to you guys. You've been great in the comment section today, by the way. You've been very, very thoughtful and very good. So I appreciate that. Purple Kool-Aid, Flores has been open about wanting a shot at being a head coach again. The NFL isn't going to hire him as one. I agree with that. But I also think it's to the Vikings' benefit that they have someone who can raise the bar for this defense. And we're seeing it already again, where a lot of players that he's developed or that he's believed in are starting to show those signs. So I think even his way of developing people makes a lot of sense, but his way of identifying skill sets, and he talked about this in depth today, of really emphasizing to players, like, this is your strength. This is what you need to do. So if you are a power rusher, rush with power. If you are a swim move guy, swimmy move, right? Like, he emphasizes so strongly that players need to play to their strengths. And we just see that again with the development of some of these guys. Joe, the pie chart on Harrison Smith's return. Well, I mean, there's only, okay, I can make a pie chart. I was going to say, like, yes or no is kind of not really a pie, but I can make a pie out of that. Not that I wouldn't eat a half a pie. Let's see. A pie chart would be returns within the next couple of weeks before the season, returns in the season, returns only if they get to the playoffs or late in the season, and doesn't return at all. So I would start out by saying returns within the next 2 weeks, I think, is not the highest chance. Maybe that's 20% chance that he comes back within the next 2 weeks. I would go at a 30% chance that he comes back within the first part of the season, and maybe only a 10% chance that he would come back late in the season. I think once you made your decision, you made your decision. And that puts me at 20, 30, and 40% that he doesn't come back at all. Maybe that's, no, I don't like that. I think that's not good enough. I think it's got to be higher. He doesn't come back at all, right? Because he has not returned to this point or shown any indication that he's going to do so. Aaron Donald is out there doing workouts for the Rams, and Sean McVay is like, we don't know, haha, right? Like, all right, I guess we know he's probably coming back, but there's no sign whatsoever of Harrison Smith. So I guess I need to do the pie chart to start out with not coming back at 55% or 60%, probably 60% that he doesn't come back. And then if he does within the next 2 weeks is maybe 20 and then 10-10. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to go with. So 20% that it's within the next 2 weeks, 10 that it's early in the season, 10 that it's in the late season, and 60% that he doesn't come back. Pie charts are harder than you think, folks. Practice them on your way to work. Let's see. Well, you guys just talking about the fan bases. Philly is definitely in its own tier. I think with this fan base, just to give my assessment, based on the 10 years, but also to go along with what we've seen recently, is that it's been put in a very certain box, forced into that box by the team. Like, if you run into another Vikings fans while visiting Iceland, what are you guys going to probably talk about? Like, oh yeah, I'm really excited for the team, but they'll probably miss a field goal at the end. Well, why is that? That's not because you chose to be that way. It's because of what's happened historically that is the disposition. And the same thing goes for, it's another retread quarterback. We've seen that many times before. Or, they drafted a franchise quarterback. This is the time it's finally different. It doesn't work out. I'm mad. Like, these things are forced by the way that the Vikings have not been able to establish a franchise quarterback for a long period of time. And they're forced by the number of times where you've had Charlie Brown, with the football. And I went to the Minnesota History Museum to see the Peanuts display. And I was like, this all makes sense now. This makes sense that Charles Schultz was from here, that this is where this came from, right? The pulling the football out from Charlie Brown is you guys a lot of times with this team. And it's been 50 years since they've been to the Super Bowl. I mean, that number really rings out, doesn't it? 50 years. So there's frustration that gets pent up that I think shows up a lot and influences every opinion that you have and every thought about the team. I mean, I follow Jets people and they're like, Geno Smith's a circus there in camp and it's crazy bad passes, crazy good passes. And they're like, this is great. Right? I mean, they have just not been anything at the quarterback position for so long, so nightmarish that's great. With Caleb Williams, even in Chicago, it's not like he even got to that 4,000 yard mark that has proven elusive, but gosh, the guy won some games. Oh my, put him on every video game cover, buy every shoe, like all that sort of stuff. They're over the moon. I think other fan bases would probably be a little more skeptical there based on some of the throwing accuracy and so forth, but them, so your history shapes your viewpoint. And I always try to keep that in mind as I'm talking about the team. Madsen, looks like I haven't had much sleep lately. No, it's really, I honestly believe in terms of the look, it has a lot to do with just being in the sun so much. I mean, you want to go to the beach, but you don't want to go to the beach every single day for 12 days out of 14, right? That's what it's like going to training camp. It's like going to the beach. You know that feeling? Anyone who's been to the beach knows like the beach tired, right? Where you go to the beach to take a nap on the beach, but then when you come home, you're kind of exhausted by it because you were out in the sun that entire time. And when I am here in my office area for most of the time in the winter, hidden in the shadows, and then have to go out to the beach for 12 straight days. It's like, whew, but it hasn't slowed me down. It's just that I think that might be the look a little bit, but you guys aren't here for the looks. I don't think. Even the hat got some critiques last night. Xavier says, was the article by Dunn really saying that KOC was done with JJ because he asked questions? No, that wasn't the point. I think you missed the point there. The point was, and this was coming from people who talked to Tyler Dunn about the situation, and also seems like another player commented on this as well to Tyler Dunn. The point was that when you're learning the new system with Kevin O'Connell, not the new system, but learning to be the franchise starting quarterback in his system, and he's got a reason for everything where it's supposed to be. So he's laying it out, and you're the one saying, well, you should be doing it differently and second guessing. And then when it comes to coming off of the field and explaining why you did something and it wasn't anything that they had prepared for, that kind of thing, like that's where the coach and the quarterback really have to be on the same page, or you end up with the stuff that we saw last year. You have to be connected, those two. And that's why Brock Purdy is such a good quarterback, and why, honestly, Jimmy Garoppolo won a lot of games for San Francisco, I think is because he could just do what Kyle Shanahan asked him to do. Now, in order to be special in the NFL, you need to be able to take that to a different level of execute what you're supposed to do and then go beyond the bounds of what a coach can control. And I think that's what they were talking about with Sam Darnold, where you might change a route and you might take a shot and might try something different because you have to do something special with your arm at some point in the game, or Kyler has to run and get 40 yards on a carry at some point where someone was wide open. In order to be great, like, you have to have those special elements, and you can't coach that. Just like basketball, you could draw up inbound plays all the time. You cannot teach somebody to shoot a fadeaway three in the corner and drill it, right? And special players are able to do that. But if you are a young player who doesn't know what you don't know, and you're sort of trying to, I mean, you've had this, I'm sure, at work. I don't know who you are, so I don't know what your job is, but if you've had jobs and you've worked, I think you know how this is. If you manage someone, if you work with someone where it's always second guessing, it's always, my idea is better than everybody else's and that kind of thing. And it can be hard to work with. So if that's what you're trying to teach someone who's kind of half your age, of you're still learning how to even play in this league, and now you're telling us how it should be done, I don't know that that's that helpful. I think that that's kind of the point, but it's also something that we could see out there, and it might be that, he needs somebody else who's going to give him that latitude, but I don't think that's how it works. Like, coaches are in charge and the players are supposed to do what they're asked to do. It's only at the quarterback position where we would say, well, what the heck? He should be able to do whatever he wants. Like, if a defensive tackle tried to do whatever he wants and he's not Vita Vea, then you're going to end up with some pretty big runs against you, right? Like, it all has a reason. So I think that's what it is. It really is more of, like, do you get it? Do you understand the stakes of this? Do you understand the magnitude? Do you understand how this all works, right? It's not like college anymore. And there were times where it felt like it was. Today, for example, I didn't feel like JJ McCarthy acted like a college kid. I think that he has presented the way he's practiced and the way he's acted as being more grown up from last year, which you would expect from a young player. So there's diagnosing the things that were happening in the past and also saying, well, what's going to happen into the future? Because if it continues to be like that, well, then, backup quarterback, that's just not going to work. Can he prove that he can really be a backup in the NFL? Like, you have to prove that too, that you're going to take the right attitude, because your job as a backup is to assist the starting quarterback and then be ready to play. Can you do that part? That's going to matter. But also, everything comes down to the throwing of the ball. I mean, if he could have completed enough passes, then he would have the latitude to say that sort of stuff, or to second guess, or to question, or to change what KOC wanted. If he could throw more accurately, and if he was on time, because he has the tools to do it, and he has the athleticism to scramble and make plays. But I mean, you have to run the basic stuff. So East Minnesota Mark says, do you see one big signing or move before the season? Safety, linebacker, tight end. I don't think tight end, but I could certainly see, well, not inside linebacker, but outside linebacker is still on the list. And I think that unless someone shows them in preseason, oh yeah, you can believe in me as a pure pass rusher, you have to have a backup for Dallas Turner. And safety is intriguing, because does Jamal Adams make the team is really a question. He's getting a lot of reps, and he's a veteran player, and they've said they like him. They like how he's come along. All those things have been positive from Jamal Adams, but I don't know what they're really seeing on tape of him as a safety, and moving him from linebacker back to safety was like, oh, okay, well, then maybe they didn't see it at linebacker, and now they're trying to see if something is still there at safety. That could be a potential option to go out and look. It is hard to find good help right before the season. Every once in a while it happens, like Kendrick Bourne for the 49ers actually helped them last season. He was cut by the Patriots. Every once in a while, a guy just sort of runs his course with the team and then becomes available. Pass rusher is definitely one of them, and maybe safety. I think they like where they're at with Jay Ward. From what Flores said, I think that they trust Josh Metellus. It's just, where are they at with, Theo Jackson? Are they going to use Jamal Adams? It seems like Jacoby Thomas would be too far away now that he's missed all these practices to have any chance to start. That's possible. That is definitely possible. Mads and Music, the Vikings over the last 20 years have been one of the most entertaining teams to watch. Yeah, that's true. No doubt about that. They are always entertaining, but I think what fans are probably exhausted of is saying, hey, we were fun, right? Yeah, I mean, which I totally understand. Totally get that. Let's see. Skull Shadow, McCarthy thinks he's Rudy and the belief alone will get him somewhere. Yeah, I mean, I think that his overall energetic, attitude and everything, I think the teammates appreciated it, but there is some element of like things are done a certain way in the pros that they're not in college. And maybe it takes a little while to get it. That's the way I kind of look at it. BM Murray throws those Russell Wilson moonball deep shots. Let's hope he doesn't follow the same trajectory, but mobile short quarterbacks usually don't age well. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess Russell Wilson really didn't start falling off until what, like 33? Let me take a look. I mean, I'm not really concerned about what is going to happen to Kyler Murray when he's, 33, when he's 29, but I see what you're saying. I mean, running, there is a little bit of historical element to the effectiveness when it comes to actual rushing. Let me see here. Yeah, it wasn't until 33, 34. Russell Wilson started to drop off 33, 34. He was still, and I know like Pro Bowls have gotten ridiculous, but they weren't always, he was still Pro Bowl quarterback into his early 30s. But, you're always concerned about that with someone who scrambles. It's just that he looks totally fine to this point. When it comes to the moon ball, yeah, and the moon ball works great if you have great receivers. Tyler Lockett, Doug Baldwin, DK Metcalf. Doesn't work if you don't have good receivers, Greg Dortch and Andy Isabella. And a lot of times that's what they had. So, yeah, Treadwell in the bleachers. Yeah, I remember the Treadwell in the bleachers thing. It never goes really particularly well. It never goes well when someone doesn't work out as a first round draft pick. There's always some moment. There's always some story. There's going to be about 8 of them with JJ McCarthy if this never works out. There was with Treadwell with the stadium steps. With Lewis Cine, I mean, are we convinced that he's a real person, that he was ever here? But, he did have that injury early on. I don't know what impact that had. BM, Caleb Banks being a rotational player by the last third of the season would be a positive. Yeah, I mean, I think he should be able to rotate right away. But in terms of playing like 30 to 40 snaps, that might take a little while. And there might have to be some patience when it comes to that. Case's defensive tackle is brutal. You have major contact on every play, run or pass. Really tough mentally and physically. You can never take a play off. Totally agree. I mean, that's why it does take more development. I remember Spielman saying it's one of the hardest mental positions because there's just so much to identify and you have to do it so quickly. There's a lot of different techniques. There's a lot of different things the O-line can do to you, and you have to get in there quick, like knife in there quickly, or make contact first, or get low first, or whatever, immediately after the ball is snapped. And that's one thing I have noticed about Banks is I think that get off is going to need work, and you'll probably see that a little bit in the preseason game. You're funny. You're funny about the, you guys got, you always have jokes. Sometimes I can't read them all, but you always have jokes. BM, if JJ is going to succeed, he needs to learn to anticipate spots opening up before they do and layering throws, what KOC has been coaching him and prodding him to do. Yeah. I mean, I don't really think that there's any conspiracy here about how this has gone. There are certain things that are non-negotiable in the NFL. McCarthy has not been able to execute them yet. Didn't show that really in this year's practices and training camp. And whether he makes it or not are going to depend on those things. I mean, that's all it really is. Mark says, well, time to walk the dog. I might be in the same spot with you. I'm here with the dog because the wife is calling Lynx tonight. So he may need a walk soon, and I got to go watch her soon because Lynx are playing Portland tonight, and I would like to see her do the game. Unfortunately, because they're so popular, there have been a lot of national games, and so she has not been doing them. But tonight, victory plus for all of you who want to see Olivia Miles play. Kit, thoughts on what the running back carry distribution will be? I know it's hard to tell in camp because they want to keep Jones fresh, but notice they've listed co-starters on the depth chart. Yeah, I think they feel that way. Should we go look at the depth chart real quick? I'll answer your question, I promise. Let me see. Where's the depth chart? Oh, there it is. Unofficial depth chart. Okay. Let's take a look at. Okay, let me answer your question first because it's a great question. I look at it as I'd like to see Jordan Mason take the majority of the carries, but Aaron Jones working in on second and long, third down, all those situations where he could potentially catch the football because he still is a great receiver. And I would not want to see as many first down or second and short carries. So maybe it's a situational type thing, or maybe it is like 2 series for Mason, 1 for Aaron Jones. I think situational makes more sense to me, but maybe it's easier to rotate him that way. But I think that Kevin O'Connell, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to go with a 50-50 split. It's just that Mason has looked really good. Those two are going to get 90% of the carries, if not more, as long as they're healthy. And then if they do get banged up, that's where you could see Xavier Scott, who I wouldn't count out at all in this conversation. He's had a good camp, or Damon Claiborne getting an opportunity. But let's go look at this. Let's go look at the depth chart. Didn't know it was out. This is unofficial, folks. Unofficial. If any of you in the comment section treat it as official, I'll block you. I'm just kidding. But it's unofficial depth chart. Even though the unofficial depth chart has been pretty dang close every year to the actual depth chart. Anyway, Kyler Murray, the starting quarterback. Backups, J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, Max Brosmer. I would like to see J.J. play the first half, by the way, after Kyler goes out. Just play the rest of it. Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason is the starting running back. Xavier Scott, Damon Claiborne, and Jermar Jefferson, who I'd never heard of before today, but the Vikings brought him on board. He's played for a couple different teams, hasn't gotten in too many games, but has played in the NFL. Fullback, Max Bredesen. The wide receiver room, the 2 wide receiver spots, Jefferson and Addison. Felton, Fleming, then Marcus Sanders and Terrell Davis. Jashawn Jones, Dylan Bell, and Trayvon Rudolph are the backups there. So I would imagine we're going to see maybe not Jefferson. Ty Felton would likely take his spot. I would be really surprised if we saw Jefferson this preseason game. And then if this is accurate, even though not official, we'll see a lot of Fleming and Jones, and then Bell probably into the second half with the other guys. And Terrell Davis has caught a couple passes the last few days. Oh, they have 3 wide receiver spots. Because I was wondering, like, where's Miles Price? Thought they might have him as returner. Okay, him and Michael Briscoe as, I guess, the slot wide receivers for the number 3 receiver spot. Do want to see a lot of Miles Price in this preseason. Tight end, they have Ben Urosic is listed as 3rd, and then Gavin Bartholomew, but I think that could change. Urosic has NFL experience, but, they might want a blocker there. Bryson Nesbitt and Marshall Lang being the deep depth guys. Darisaw is the starting left tackle, along with Ryan Vandemark. Tristan Lay is the backup there, and Donovan Jackson, Joe Huber, and Vershawn Lee are the guys at left guard. At center, Brandel, and then Juergens, Gerhardt, and Delby Lemieux is listed as the center. At the right guard position, Walter Rouse and Tomas Rimac are the right guards. So I'm curious, though, if we see, because we've seen Huber in at right guard for Fries, if we do see Walter Rouse get a lot of work. Haven't seen a lot of him. He's been with the 3rd team. Doesn't feel like that's a great situation. And right tackle, Bird is listed at right tackle, even though he has been a guard. That is interesting as well. Maybe he'll play tackle because there's only so many of them for the preseason. But Tiernan listed as the backup right tackle. On the defensive side, it is noted here that the Vikings are listed in a 3-4 base. Thank you, Vikings.com, for listing that. Starters, Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Ty Ingram Dawkins. This is how it's been in practice. So this is accurate for the starters. And then the backups being Banks and Orange, then Isaiah Loudermilk. Eric Johnson, the other veteran, is listed kind of in the second wave here. So it seems like Loudermilk is winning the battle there. Elijah Williams kind of in that second wave as well. Outside linebackers, Batty and Richter, they've been playing a lot. Cameron Stewart is one to watch for sure. He's had some good moments. On the inside linebacker, Jake Golday and Ivan Pace are listed as backups, along with a couple other guys, Jacob Roberts, Josh Ross, and Bengali Kamara. And then at corner, James Pierre listed as the backup on one side. And on the other side, Dwight McGlothern ahead of Chuck Demings, but that is just not the case. I mean, Demings has been way ahead of McGlothern this entire time. That is just by experience, for sure. But Zamiah Vaughn we should see a lot of. And another guy, Devon Armstead. Don't sleep on Devon Armstead. I'm going to throw him out there as well. Safety, Metellus and Jay Ward are listed as the starters with Theo Jackson. That's notable that Metellus and Ward are listed as the starters and Theo Jackson as a backup, where he was a starter last year, and Jamal Adams listed there as well. So there you go. And let's just be clear, the unofficial depth chart. So, okay, the distribution, though, let's just say that they carry the ball 400 times. That seems like a lot. As a team, though, I guess you might carry 400 times. No, let's go 300. 300 times. I honestly don't know how many times a team carries it for an entire season for a whole franchise. But let's just make an easy number, 300. I would want that to be Jordan Mason with 200 of those, I guess, between those two running backs. But I wouldn't be shocked because of their trust in Aaron Jones if it's closer than that. That's how I put it. So, okay, well, it's been a really good chat, and I appreciate it. And I know that you guys do sometimes argue with each other, but I think that it was a calmer chat than it was yesterday, and I do appreciate that. So I think we'll call it a day for today. And I'm sorry if I missed any questions, but check in tomorrow. There'll be another one. And I do have some plans for some guests coming up here, actually some very good guests. So if it does end up just being like a walkthrough practice with no takeaways or anything like that, I don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. Then we'll definitely just make sure you get those guest podcasts are up, but they will be for sure. I've got a couple of scheduled before the preseason game to preview it and so forth. So I'm excited about those. Recording 2 tomorrow in the morning and then 1 on Friday. So there's a lot on the way. And if it is more of an active practice, then we'll go live again tomorrow night and break it all down. So thanks everybody, as always, for dropping in to another live show here, and we will do it again very soon. Almost preseason time, folks. Almost time where Vikings players put on helmets and run into somebody else. What more can we ask for?